So you give me
Go ahead. Go ahead.
okay. Hello, podcast family. Hello, YouTube family. This is Chats with Baba, brought to you by the Lighthouse for Academic and Cultural Excellence. This weekly chat is for the purpose of informing and empowering parents of young Black children about their role in releasing the natural genius in our children, the natural genius in our children. Last week, I talked about, the role of parents and the attitude of parents as teachers of children. And so, my goal over the next few weeks, few months, sessions is to really help parents to understand and know the importance of what they do in laying the foundation for learning. Okay, laying the foundation for learning. Now, let me put a pin in that and come back to something that I want to share with you. On the news this evening, they were talking about one of the Republican candidates who was asked a question in an audience about what was the cause of the Civil War. Her response was, oh, it was about how government was going to work and run and function and so forth and so on. So there was a pause, and someone said, what about slavery? Her response was, what about it? And immediately there was a reaction from the audience and from others who were watching the broadcast. What about it? She was a former governor of the state of South Carolina that was the first to withdraw from the Union. And her notion was, well, what is it that you want to say about slavery? Well, we're at a time in this country when we are divided as I've ever seen it in the 86 years that I've been on the face of the earth. Divided. Now, in this division, people are either on this side of the aisle or that side of the aisle on the issue. So when we talk about the issue of slavery and racism, everything is being done to scrub it from the textbooks as we go forward. All you have to do, and pardon me for being a little academic this evening, but I must share some things with you. Across the country, different legislative bodies are scrubbing textbooks with respect to the real history of what they want in it and who's going to be teaching what. We have a responsibility to our children to let them know who we are, how we got to be who we are, and why. So stay with me for just a moment and allow me to be a little academic and read you a couple of statements by the late Asa G. Hilliard. And this was written over 25 years ago. And the title of the paper is African Deep Thought. African Deep Thought. And it's taken from a book written entitled The Children of the Sun. And this was written in 1918. And stay with me. In the morning of the world, when the fingers of love swept aside the curtain of time, our dusky mother, Ethiopia, held the stage. It was she who wooed civilization and gave birth to nations. It was Ethiopia, the history of Ethiopia, that gave civilization and birth to nation. Egypt was her firstborn, and to Ur of the Chaldees, she sent her sons and daughters, who scattered empires in Asia as the wanton winds of autumn scattered seeds of flowers. That was written by a well-known scholar. Let me read you a little more. The scholars of that day, saw the book, The Children of the Sun, as so scholarly. It was translated into English and a special edition sent to the Atlantic to be known as the American edition. The translator, out of respect to the feelings of Americans respecting the Black race, left out the following quotation, and I quote, "There a people now forgotten, discovered while others were yet barbarians." Yeah. We as Africans were discovering, discovering while others were coming out of caves. I want to cite from Asa's book, Saba, The Reawakening of the African Mind. We came here in chains, but we were richly endowed. Africans who were brought to America were the heirs of the world's first recorded civilization. The, in quotes, Children of the Sun was the book that I made reference to, and the Nile were the world's first writers. They recorded nearly 3,000 years of unbroken civilization. They, Africans, gave the world religion as we know it, and the beginnings of the arts, sciences, and architect beyond comparison. So we were Africans contributing to the civilization of the world long before America was even a thought. We go back thousands of years. As I am sharing with you, Tony Browder, a noted sociologist at Howard University, who's written extensively, has been working in Africa on uncovering or unearthing the 26th dynasty that goes back thousands of years ago. He so named it the Asification Project. Okay, the Asification Project, that is uncovering this dynasty that has just been covered over for centuries. And it's named after Asa Hilliard. Now, why am I saying this? We have a responsibility to our children of letting them know who they are, what their history is, how we became who we are, and why. It's also important for them to understand all of the contributions the Africans gave to world civilization. And Africa is still being studied. So when I do the podcast and I talk about wanting to empower our parents, you are their first and foremost teachers. And as I said last week and weeks prior to that, I want to focus energy around STEM, STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. When you look at certain statistical reports on how children in America are doing in these areas, our children have the worst scores. And I just don't want to spend a lot of time on statistics, but I think it's important that I do share some things with you. It's not that they can't learn, it's how they were taught and their attitude towards learning. So the whole notion of this podcast is for you as teachers to lay the foundation that will enable them to continue the historical contributions of Africa from Africa to the world in math, in science, in technology. When we look at data in the STEM areas, okay, when we look at data in the STEM areas, we have far fewer people of our children of color who are in chemistry, engineering, physics, earth science, math, and statistics. Fewer. The world is moving at an extremely rapid pace, and AI, artificial intelligence, is helping to expedite that trajectory. There's a lot of good things you can say about AI. It's here, and there's a lot of good things that will help to help us in terms of our own humanity. For those who take advantage of it in a positive way. Also, there are those who will probably misuse it, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. But I do want to spend some time on this issue of STEM and what we can do to make life better for our children. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the language. You hear the word digital learning and so forth and so on. It's okay. What does that mean? That's an easy way of saying that in this digital world that we live in, it's taking technology and using it to facilitate how we learn anything. It makes it easier. Okay, it enables us to grasp certain concepts with less problems that we've had in the past. So when they talk about digital learning, that's what they're basically talking about. How do we use technology to facilitate learning? Now, there are some skills that that call for us to continue having a hands-on experience. All of the reports from the American Academy of Pediatrics talk about the role of play in our children's development, and as they go about the business of exploring and learning things. Let me kind of digress for just a moment. As I was sharing with Miss Mayo, a young man that my son grew up with today is literally a rocket scientist, and I've known him since he was 2. He and his dad, who was a renowned sculptor, came by the house the other day, and we were just reflecting on his growing up, and he expressed a desire for science early on. You always saw him with a mason jar, collecting bugs, collecting things of that nature. So his inclination to want to discover and explore was always there. That's what we see in our children when we talk about the natural genius. It is there. All we have to do is to ignite it and light a fire under it. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the kit. I was wanting to have it before you today, and I have it upstairs. I'm still putting it together, but the kit is called the PEEP Kit, P-E-E-P, Parent Education for Excellence in Preschoolers. Okay, Parent Education for Excellence in Preschool. It is a parent toolbox. Now, when you see it and you see what's in it, you'll say, well, there's nothing extraordinary about it. Exactly. There's nothing extraordinary. What makes a difference is how do you use what's in there to lay a foundation that will extend our children's thirst for science, thirst for math, thirst for technology over their lifetime. And it starts with a desire to want to know. And it is naturally there. Okay, the desire of wanting to know is naturally there. We don't have to create it, it's there. What we want to do is to light a fire under it and keep it going. And we keep it going by looking at things that's in the PEEP kit that will enable them, that will enable you to enable them to develop this extended foundation for wanting to learn. Let me just kind of go through what's in there. And when you see it, I will have it next week. When you see it, you're going to say, well, there isn't anything that, right. Everything that's in the kit, you are familiar with. The challenge is for you for you, as I share with you, a different way of using them. For example, one of the items in there is a set of blocks, wooden stamp blocks, letters of the alphabet, one set of multicultural letters. Okay, so you have one set of blocks and one set of multicultural letters. One set of multicultural and multi-sized geometric shapes. You have triangle, square, rhombus, ellipse, all of these geometric shapes of different colors and different sizes that we learn to organize them in patterns. We learn to organize them in sets. We learn to organize them in ways that children begin to get grasp all of what you can do with these things. So you also have a set of multicultural blocks, regular block, multicultural. I want you to hear the consistency from the geometric shapes to the letters to the blocks. You hear colors, multicultural, multicolor, not multicultural, but multicolor. And there's a reason, because then you can sort and organize them according to size, shape, texture, a variety of things. Okay, all of these are elements of a foundation for mathematics and science. You have one set of dice. Yeah, dice that you roll the dice, and what number comes up? Will this number come up? Will that number come up? So what you're talking about is probability. If you roll this, will you get a 3 and a 4? If you roll this, will you get snake eyes? If you roll this. So these are mathematical concepts. One set of alphabet learning flashcards. So you will have flashcards, you will have multicolored letters and blocks that you organize words, statements, etc. All of this helps children as they are grasping with different concepts. Keep in mind that their mind is the computer, just absorbing everything that they're exploring, everything that they're tinkering with, everything that they are examining. You have a set of scientific items such as they're not live, but you have fish, bugs, sea life, elements of fish, elements of bugs, elements of sea life. So they begin to explore what and raise the questions: what if? What if these were alive? What size would they grow to? What is their life extension? And on and on and on. There's a booklet, parent guide, that helps you when you hit a snag. The one thing that I want you to come away from this, once we get into the lessons and the absolute demonstrations, everything that you do and our children do doesn't turn out to be successful. You say, is it fail? It didn't work. You didn't fail. That didn't work. Whatever you were doing or exploring, it didn't work. It doesn't mean it didn't. It doesn't mean it's a failure. It means you need further exploration, further discovery, further tinkering. And then at some point you get, aha, aha. And you see your face and the child's face light up. And so it's you will have the handbook so that when you hit a snag, you have every reason to open up to that helps you to guide you through whatever the issue is. We will get into levels of questioning that enables you to see the critical thinking possibilities just by asking questions. You may not have all the answers, and it's not important that you do. What you want to do is to facilitate language. Where you have a Nerf ball. Every child should have a ball. You develop throwing, you develop catching, you develop eye-hand coordination. All of these things that's just a part of the natural ability of children to play. And then, we also explore what are the items that you already have in your house that can contribute to the elements in the kit. For example, in your kitchen, you have measuring items, spoons, cups for wet measure and dry measure. You have muffin pans. Now, I don't like to waste food, but there are times when you have beans, peas that can be used to sort and count. You have multicolored beans, you have beans of different sizes and whatever. You can put them set aside a one-time use of them, not one-time use, but a one-time buying of them, and have them in bags that we'll see. We have buttons, all sizes of buttons, large buttons, small buttons, buttons with 2 holes, button with 4 holes. You have items that are disposable, plastic items that we can use over and over and over again. So what I'm saying is, with these items that become a part of the PEEP kit, it enables you with your child and or children to discover and explore all the possibilities. Now, what has this got to do with STEM? Well, one of the great mathematicians, Dr. Abdullah Shabazz, said that if children have a healthy attitude toward mathematics, there's no limit. It's sort of like, if when you, as a parent, when you're feeding a baby vegetables, you often, they reject those green vegetables that we're trying to give them. But we blend those vegetables sometimes with applesauce or plums that has a different taste. Over time, we adjust the mixture until they develop an appetite of and a desire for them. They eventually get around to liking it. It's the same thing with math. It's the same thing with science. It's an attitude. If your attitude and behavior is such that you weren't good at it, you don't want to communicate that to the children. You don't want to communicate frustration about learning to the children, even when they get frustrated. When your task in terms of observing them is to notice when they hit a roadblock and get a little frustrated, is to see what appears to be causing it and how to undo it, that to enable them to move forward. So all of this has to do with laying that foundation for STEM literacy. I hope I'm making sense to you on these things. But as I said, the history of math, the history of science, medicine, all goes back to the early civilizations of Africa. And so our children need to understand our history, our contributions to the world. And it's not that we haven't given, we've done as much as anybody. Consider this: music in America would not be what it is if we had to depend on someone else bringing forth our history. For example, the banjo. The banjo, we associate with country music or certain regions of the country. Trace the history of the banjo, and it goes all the way back to Africa. We don't think about those things. So what I'm saying is, as our children see devices and explore with things that you will have in the kit, you will want to recognize in them a healthy attitude towards learning. When you look at the blocks, the deluxe blocks that are there, you'll say, oh, all the numbers. Those numbers, it's still 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's all. When you look at the blocks, it's still A through Z. It's how do you use these things and other symbols, such as math symbols, science symbols, and you put together scientific statements or mathematical statements that make sense to the children. And the digital learning, and I'll be working with you on that, helps to explain things that often come with some degree of difficulty. Now, I hope I just wasn't rambling, but I wanted you to know that as we move forward, it's important that we begin with a healthy attitude. And as we look at the PEEP kit and the items in the kit, some of which you will have at in your home. If not, the kit is available, and I'll talk about costs at another time, but I want you to see what's in there. And when we talk about cost, it's also an investment. It is an absolute investment in those things that will help to lay that foundation. The kid is not a silver bullet. Okay. It's what you do with it with your children that will make a difference in unlocking that natural genius. And the amazing thing is that when you see children learn and discover, their face light up like 100-watt bulb. They got it. You have a similar kind of response when you see your children respond to those kinds of things. Okay. Let me stop there and say that next week I'm going to have the kit, and I want to go through items in the kit, and I want to demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about with items in the kit. For example, I'll close on this. You can teach principles of algebra, okay, with to 2 and 3 year olds. Principles of algebra. You don't call it algebra, but the concept, algebraic concepts, can be taught to 2 and 3 year olds just by knowing how to organize the blocks and letters so that children begin to put certain items in their head as they see them. You have a block A plus a block B is equal to B plus A. That is a mathematical concept. A plus B is equal to B plus A. It's the commutative property. We don't say that to 2 year olds, but once they internalize that, they can apply it to other situations. And that is the undergirding of a foundation for literacy. So with that, you can visit my website, drjamesyoung.com. You will see on there my philosophy that talks about the essence of excellence. You will see on there books that I've written, and there will be new books added. Jimmy's Village just came out. And it talks about a young boy growing up before all of this technology and all of this highfalutin stuff that we had. What was life like without all of this? And what enabled him to go from childhood to a professor? What were the things from the village that fortified him to become the person that he became? Another book that's on there is If Teachers' Hands Were Not Tied. Recently, without naming the situation, a public advocate, an advocate for public education, just brought copies of my book for an entire school board and an entire administrative staff for a local school system. It said, if we're going to ensure that children develop critical thinking, we have to not tie teachers' hands from teaching what they are capable of. So with that, enjoy, and I look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye now.